Hello, welcome to today's restorative. Today is all about breath as medicine, so we will really be focusing on breath. A restorative practice is a really great way to allow your body to decompress, to de stress, and your one job here in restorative is to just relax. So finding as much relaxation as possible. So it's a pretty prop intensive type of class. So if you have some bolsters, some blankets, blocks, a couple of blankets even. If you don't have bolsters, you can always take some towels or blankets and kind of fold them up in a bolster shape, even stacking a couple. And then oftentimes I've wrapped a towel around this, and this kind of creates its own little bolster shape for you. And just get the room really nice and comfortable. If it's chilly, make sure that you have some layers, extra blankets or towels. Um, Whatever music is nice and calming to you. This doesn't record with music, so have that available to yourself. And we're going to start out in what is one of my absolute favorite poses, Mountain Brook pose. So having a blanket or a towel underneath your knees or a bolster, then having another one that's going to come up about mid-back, enough so that the tops of your shoulders are going to kind of fall off the back. And then I think it's always nice to have another blanket that's a little bit higher. I don't really like to let the head fall all the way back and have kind of a deep curve or kink in the cervical spine in your neck. So just kind of wiggling, making space. You can bring your arms all the way out to the side. Make as many adjustments as you need. And then just allow yourself to settle in here. And in restorative, we'll be spending a few minutes in each pose, really allowing you to soften, allowing gravity and the props to create space, to create a stillness. And this is really important in order to help bring the body and find a state of rest and digest. And a great way to do that, and what we're going to be focusing on today, is the breath. So as you're here in this pose, just start to notice at first how the breath draws in. Where are you noticing that it fills up first without making any adjustments? Just noticing in your body. Maybe you fill up your chest first. Maybe your low belly fills. Noticing the inhale as it's cool against your nose. Noticing the warmth of the exhale as it leaves. And then as you're here in this space, it's really easy because we're kind of flowing. Our body is making like as if our body was water rolling over rocks. And imagine that breath as you inhale. It's kind of traveling up that hill, but really fill up the low belly. Then go up the hill again to that diaphragm. Let it travel almost as if following gravity towards shoulders. Keep going with that breath to the crown of the head, and then exhale the low belly. Exhale the diaphragm, the ribs and collarbone. And just keep this full, deep three-part breath. The low belly, the diaphragm just under your ribs, and then feel the ribs expand, collarbone expand up into the crown of the head, and then exhale from the low belly, the diaphragm, and just let that wave of breath go back and forth. Breath is an important part of our autonomic nervous system. Often we do not need to think about it. But when we become conscious, when we take just 3 deep breaths, will take us from that sympathetic fight, flight to rest and digest where the body can heal. When we are purposely deep breathing, we're sending signals to the brain that we're okay in this space. And I think we often don't realize how much our bodies are in a state of stress. And long-term stress has some pretty significant long-term consequences on our health. Continue that breathing. Each exhale, maybe there's somewhere that you notice you're holding. Maybe it's you are trying to lift your hips or your shoulders. Just let them land. Let them land completely and entirely to the ground. This deep 3-part diaphragmatic breathing is massaging the vagus nerve. So helping with vagal toning. And vagal toning is the ability to go from fight or flight or freeze. A lot of times we forget that that is part of our stress. And then coming back into a rest and digest parasympathetic mode where we are more social. There is a broader depth of healing in the parasympathetic. And so this is part of it. Just one of the many tools to help with vagal toning is deep diaphragmatic breathing. So a few more in this position. And if any of these postures starts to become uncomfortable, like you're holding it for too long, feel free to shift. Feel free to move. These postures are good, but if you start to feel uncomfortable, then we're defeating the point here. Absolute rest is what we're looking for. Maybe just for the last few deep 3-part breaths that wave in or flow through your body like a river, almost as if you can imagine each inhale as nourishing, and it is waving through your body all the way down to your toes this time, not just your low belly. Bringing in that supply of fresh oxygen, and it's almost sweet, as if you can imagine that breath as sweet and nourishing. And the exhale is comforting and releasing. So there's tension being released with each exhale. And there's no need to concern yourself with what the breath is releasing, because your body is intuitive and knows. That wave of breath is just carrying out anything that you don't need, everything that you no longer need. As you're here in this space, gently just bring those arms, the elbows maybe to the top of your bolster, starting to make some circles into the wrists. Can go in both directions, back and forth. Then bringing those arms, maybe take a big inhale, reach overhead. As you exhale, just bring the elbows in front of you, taking hold of either elbow with opposite hand, like I Dream of Jeannie arms. On an inhale, the left hand just draws that right elbow over to the side, to the left, and then circle the arms towards your belly button. Right arm gently pulls that left elbow and then up overhead. So just make some big circles, getting into the shoulders here. So in between each completely restful pose, we'll do just a little bit of stretching, a little bit of moving of the joints, just so that they can find a nice release. Moving our bodies still in numerous directions every day helps. And then let's reverse. So bring left hand kind of draws that right elbow and maybe up overhead, and then down to your belly button. Using that breath to initiate the movement each time. So almost as if you could infuse breath into your movements, into the shoulders, or that the breath is initiating each movement. Trying to bring the best quality of breathing we can while we're here today. Then you can release that, bringing soles of feet towards the mat or on top of your bolster. And then you can just kind of take a minute to windshield wiper the knees from side to side. If that bolster behind your back, if this isn't comfortable, feel free to move it out to the side, or even the one under your legs. And then we'll just windshield wiper. So soles of the feet to the mat, about mat width apart. Each exhale, they drift to one side. And the inhale initiates that movement of coming back towards center. And this is totally optional. If you happen to have a wall really close to you, or can get to a wall, or even a couch, feel free. It's not going to be necessary. I've just decided that my nemesis wall right here is going to start to work for me. So if you kind of wanted to have something underneath your head, we're only going to be here for a little bit. Bringing soles of the feet up towards the wall. If you don't have a wall, no problem. Just bring your feet up. Hands can be to a T. So kind of like a dead bug, and or legs up the wall, whatever works best for where you're at today. Just take a moment here, a couple of deep breaths, filling up the low belly up into the diaphragm. As you exhale, low belly, then the diaphragm, the ribs soften. And then wherever you're at, so you can keep your left leg up, crossing the right leg over, and then just flexing into the right foot, keep the right knee open. If your leg is against the wall, you can just start to slide that heel down until you feel just a little stretch on that outer right hip. If you're not using the wall, you can just gently bend into that figure four, drawing the leg in with your hands underneath, back behind your hamstring, breathing into that outer hip. Big deep inhales, 3-part breath. So fill up the low belly, the mid of the ribs, just below your ribs is where your diaphragm sits. Then expand into the rib cage. Exhale, soften low belly. So we typically take about 17,000 to 23,000 breaths a day. And sometimes they are just accessory breathing, so meaning just up into very small part of our lungs. We often don't use our entire lung capacity. And then release, bringing both legs either just back up, like as in dead bug, or you can use that wall. Big deep inhale, cleansing exhale. And often that's a good way to tell if our bodies are kind of in that state of stress, is if you're just using that upper part of your lungs. So if you're not using the full capacity, or maybe you're holding your breath even, then we'll cross that left leg over, flex into the left foot, keep the left knee open. If your feet are up against a wall, go ahead and slide that right heel down just until you feel a gentle little stretch. Same thing if you're dead bug, if your legs are just up, just gently draw that knee down. Hands behind your hamstring. As you inhale, think of any of the breath is kind of finding the area of tension. It's moving throughout your body to explore and find tension, and then it releases any and all tension as you exhale. So allowing the breath to become an anchor throughout your day. Maybe even setting little alarms on your phone just to check in with breath. See where your breath is at. Taking 3 full body, 3-part breaths. And just seeing how that affects your day, that can release some tension. And also, breath allows us to become present. And then let's release one more time, bringing those legs just straight up, or you can have them against a wall and you can let the feet fall open. And if you're tired of holding those legs up, draw knees into chest and just kind of resting there. And wherever you're at, bringing those feet away from the wall if they're against a wall, bringing them back up if you happen to have them down, and if pointing and flexing into the feet to work into the ankles. Maybe make some circles and circling the other direction. And gently draw knees into the chest wherever you're at. We're going to come up to Our next restorative, which is going to be child's pose. So in restorative child's pose, just getting as comfortable as possible. So making sure that if you have a particularly hard floor, that you bring something underneath your knees. Knees are still going to be wide, toes together. And then it's all about just kind of creating a little tower. And so couple of options. You can just stack a couple of bolsters, and some people like to have a blanket across the top. So this is going to come just kind of in between the legs, and then feel that body drape over. You can keep the forehead down. You can do rest one cheek to each side, and I'll tell you when we're about halfway there. Some people like to kind of bring this up, meet them a little bit higher in their child's pose. So finding that best position for you. I, for this one especially, like to have my shoulders falling across on either side because I like the feeling of opening up that space in the back body to create a little bit deeper breath in the back body, but that's totally up to you. So as you're here in this child's pose, focus on drawing that breath towards the back part of the lungs, as if you could almost breathe into all the way beyond the spine, between the place of your shoulder blades, behind your heart. And as you exhale, feel the belly soften and let the back body almost blanket a little bit deeper, as if you could feel the shoulder blades separating across your bolsters. And notice here as you are still inhaling into the low belly first and letting that breath travel up in the spine. Maybe you just notice where your belly presses against the mat, bolsters. In the yoga world, breath work is called pranayama. Prana is vital force, and yama is regulation or discipline. So there's this ancient wisdom in the Yoga Sutras 1.34 that says calm is retained by the controlled exhalation or retention of breath. So letting our body just tune back into that ancient wisdom of letting our breath work with that ability to transform our state of mind, the state that our body is in. The state of our emotions. And if you have one cheek to one side, go ahead and you can switch sides that your cheek is resting on. You can even take a little wiggle if you need to, and then come back to that anchoring of your breath. Again, noticing your low belly as it presses down, and then feel that breath infusing all the way into your back body, using all of the lungs. Maybe you even feel it drawing up your spine to the back of your head, to the crown of your head. And as you exhale, let there be this deep softening, like your whole back body was a blanket and was just draping fully across the bolsters, expanding the space behind your heart, in between your shoulder blades. And here again, there's no effort on your part except to relax. So the effort here is in turning off the need to tense and tighten. And again, let that breath be the guide here. There's no need to worry because breath will show you where there is tension and breath will release it. And just allow yourself a couple more deep, full breaths. And on one of those exhales, start to bring the hands on either side of the bolster. Draw your shoulder blades down your back, and then gently bring that torso back to more of an upright position. And then we're going to tuck our toes under and gently sit back only for a moment just to open up the bottom of the feet. The feet are kind of often neglected and we're on them a lot. So getting them to stretch and open. As you're here, we'll just do a little counter to all of that rounding forward. So taking those hands, clasping them behind the back. Think of bringing pubic bone to belly button to soften the curve in your low back. And then inhale, lift up those arms, open up the chest. If you'd like, you can lift the chin. As you exhale, just release all of that. You can come off of your toes, and we'll come to just an easy seated position. So if you'd like, you can sit on a bolster or just a blanket or a towel, sitting on the edge of that, whatever feels most comfortable to you. One foot in front of the other. Always feels like a really messy room whenever you do restorative, but that's okay. Take a nice big inhale. Reach the arms overhead. Keep shoulder blades gliding down your back. As you exhale, that left hand comes down to the mat. Reach the right arm over, keeping that chest open and that right sits bones down on the ground just to feel a stretch along the side body. Inhale, come back up through center. As you exhale, the right hand softens down, left hand reaches over, keeping our shoulders open and that sits bones down on the ground. Inhale, coming back up through center. As you exhale, bringing the right hand, so using index finger and thumb on top of the collarbone, just nice and gently. Then the left hand is going to kind of just gently come on top, and there's a little gentle downward pressure. So you're not pulling down, but it's almost just like the weight of the hands, weight of gravity. And then gently bring that right ear towards right shoulder, soften the tops of the shoulders. Big deep inhale, cleansing exhale, and kind of drawing that head back gently as if you're just moving the back of your head towards whatever is behind you, nice and easy. And then if you wanted a little bit deeper stretch in the front of the throat, go ahead and open the mouth. Closing the mouth, coming up to center. Inhale. Bring those arms up. Feel that reach up as your tailbone softens down. As you exhale, this time left hand, so index finger and thumb on top of the collarbone, right hand on top. Just a really gentle downward motion. Left ear towards left shoulder. Using that exhale to soften the tops of the shoulders. Then gently drawing the back of the head towards the wall behind you, just like maybe an inch or two. And again, if you wanted to then kind of bring that stretch more towards the front of the throat, you could open your mouth. Closing the mouth, coming up to center. And then maybe here, just to make some movements into that low back and torso, hands on top of the knees. Draw that torso forward. Take a nice big inhale. As you exhale, use those hands kind of like as a lever as the back body draws towards whatever is behind you. Often in a lot of ancient scripture, like in the Bible, breath is the animator. Breath is spirit. It is what animates and makes alive. And then let's reverse that circle. Also is pretty much true from our first breath to our last. When we take that last breath, we are no longer alive here on this plane. But if it is that spirit and life force, then connecting to it, using it to transform. Even when our emotions start to override us, we can connect and anchor to breath to calm ourselves. Come back towards center nice and gently, and we'll find that next pose. So it's just a simple bridge pose here. So again, if you'd like to have something kind of to soften underneath the head. And as always, there are some options in this pose. So bringing one bolster to start out. And I recommend laying down first rather than sending those hips up onto something. You can roll up the bottom edge of your towel or blanket underneath that natural curvature of your neck if that feels comfortable to you. Then once you're down here, soles of the feet to the mat, press into the heels, lift up your hips, then scoot that bolster underneath your hips. Soles of the feet can stay down towards the mat. So a couple of options. Some people like a really high bridge. So then if you can kind of play around with how much more that you would like. This, I could tell, is too much for me. But some people like to add another bolster, another blanket, but make this be as easy as possible. We're not looking for a huge back bend here. And some people just like a block, but just using whatever feels most comfortable to you, settling into this bridge position. You can cactus the arms, you can bring them out to a T. Some people also like arms overhead here. And another option, and this will get into the hip flexors, would be to straighten the legs. So it's kind of more like a back bend, and there's a little bit more of a stretch in that front body and to the hip flexors. So whatever feels best for you today, and I can even going back and forth is totally fine. If you would like to stretch out the hip flexors, we're going to be here about 4 minutes or so. And here in this pose, thinking about breath as balancing. So using the Nadi Shodhana breath, and we're going to go more. There is a touch one. So typically we would bring our ring finger and thumb to the right side of the nostril, ring finger to the left. But we're going to do this more on a visual. So we call it virtual Nadi Shodhana. So on your next inhale, think of your inhale going up just into the right nostril. It may not actually, you're probably breathing through both. But just visualize the air coming up through the right nostril, touching at a point in between your eyebrows into that third eye. As you exhale the breath, visualize the exhale as it's warm, exiting through the left nostril. Next inhale, inhale up, visualize that air breathing through the left nostril, touching that point just between your eyebrows. And as you exhale the breath, moving out the right. Inhale, up through the right nostril, touching that third eye, and exhaling out the left. So keep this visualization of alternate nostril breathing going. We have different nadis or energy lines. And so this is dealing with Ida and Pingali. So sun and moon, feminine and masculine, cold and hot. And just using our breath, our minds to create a balance here. Inhaling through one side, exhaling out the other. Inhaling where your exhale just came out, and imagine just briefly it touches between your eyebrows. And let that visualization of breath be the most effort you have right now, and your physical body is just letting go of tension. Even if soles or feet are to the mat, you can let the knees drift in on each other. There's no need to create tension. Allowing the body to just focus on this alternate breathing, to draw completely into this present moment with yourself. There's no need to focus on anything else here on your mat. It's just you and this breath, maintaining this thoughtfulness of alternate breathing, Nadi Shodhana. Letting the mind calm of everything else, letting the body rest fully and completely. Just a few more. And if your legs are still extended, go ahead and gently draw soles of the feet to the mat. Just take a little moment there after that stretch of the hip flexors. Then lifting up the hips, gently removing that bolster or block or whatever it was that you had underneath your hips, drawing those knees into the chest, letting them drift towards the outside of your rib cage, bringing soles of the feet towards the ceiling. You can take hold of the calf, the ankle, or the knife edges of your feet and just feel this nice little sinking into happy baby. So let the knees sink down, let the shoulder blades sink into the mat, let your low belly soften. If it feels good to find some movement here, maybe rocking from side to side. And releasing that, gently rolling over to one side just to come up to set ourselves up in some nice little twisting poses. So setting up bolster towards the top of your mat about lengthways. So setting that right hip against the bolster. So this is going to have a couple of options. Having some blankets handy, and also maybe some blocks. So a couple of options here. So we'll extend that left leg down the length of the mat. Right hip is against the bolster, extending that right leg out straight. So these are option one, is to have the legs straight. And then we're just going to turn the torso. And so again, you might also want to stack up another bolster depending on how your body's feeling with this stretch, and then just allow yourself to melt over the top. So you could stack bolsters here. You could also bring a block for underneath. So then it's coming up just a little bit higher. And you will feel a little bit more on the IT band here if this leg is straight. You might even feel something in this hip flexor as you're turned over. Um, Sometimes people like to have just a blanket folded up at the top of their bolster to rest their cheeks on. If this stretch is feeling really intense for the day, go ahead and bend into that knee. And then you might want to play with just adding some blankets around there. Or you can even draw that left knee in, and it's just this nice little twist. You can even keep the twist going so left cheek is coming down to the mat. You can even have a blanket in between the knees for a little bit of cushion. So a lot of options here in this kind of twisting pose. But once you find what feels best to you for today, go ahead and settle into that, taking a big deep inhale. And this time, focus on that exhale, because as we are twisting, you might notice it's a little harder to breathe into that space of the low belly. And I'm going to bring, it almost feels like it's too high down there, even though I'm keeping my legs straight. So you may want to kind of create like a little pillow for that knee, because the ground is kind of really far down there. Even a block underneath that knee would be really helpful, because I feel like that stretch feels good today, but not tweaking into the knee. So as you inhale, feel the breath moving into that twist. Notice the compressive feeling, and then really focus on the exhale. Getting every last ounce of breath. Twisting poses are cleansing, kind of detoxifying here. And so letting that exhale go. Using breath as a tool today to find healing. Notice how deep your exhale can go. Get nice and slow with the exhale and let every drop go. Allow yourself just a couple more breaths on this side. Each exhale bringing this deeper sense of calm, deeper release of tension. And then, as you're ready, bringing both hands to either side of the bolster. It's also helpful to bend into both of those extended legs and just gently press the torso upwards. Can even take a moment to windshield wiper the knees from side to side, just to soften into the hips before we move to the other side. And then you can leave your setup exactly how it is, but then just turning to bring the left hip towards the edge of the bolster. So this time, right leg is going to be extended down the length of the mat. Left leg is extended outwards. Left hip is against the bolster. So as if you're straight legs here. Take an inhale, turn that torso towards your bolster, soften down. And again, you can feel free to bend to the knees. You can even bring them both together if this is too much intensity for the day. And just allow yourself to once again start to connect to those broad and deep inhales and really slowly release your exhales. So the body really can only heal when it's in a state that it feels safe to do so. And as I've been kind of going back to studying nutrition, I keep hearing about things that trigger different maladies in the body, and almost all of them mention stress. So it's really important that we acknowledge this, acknowledge that our bodies are in a state of stress quite often, and finding tools to release. And breath is this great gift. It's simple, effective. Allow yourself a couple more full deep inhales and really slowly release on your exhale, getting as much breath as you possibly can, as if you could draw out every drop. And then gently bringing both hands on either side of that bolster, and on an exhale, bending into the knees and then pressing yourself back up, coming once again with those feet forward, a little bit of windshield wipering of the knees. And so we really just have one more pose and then a very simple final resting pose that I kind of really like to go from directly from one to the other. So we're going to start out in kind of a reclined butterfly. So setting it up here, using some blocks to kind of create like a little lounge here. So one block up on the highest part, one block horizontal down low, placing a bolster on the end of this. And then I also like to create kind of like a little soft ramp for the low back. So there's just using your towel or blanket. So there's this kind of nice little soft edge, not such a hard edge for the low back. And then bringing soles of the feet together. But I also like to bring a bolster so that we can finish in just reclined yogi. So you can either have this bolster here, soles of the feet to the top of the bolster, knees drifting outwards. So then we're resting back. If this is really intense on your hip flexors, feel free to do one leg at a time, and I'll definitely let you know when we're halfway through. You could also bring another block or a blanket, or both, to kind of prop up your thighs here. So kind of helping ease off a little bit of that tension underneath the thighs. So there's just this nice opening in the hips and not creating a lot of tension. So wherever that is for you, let that be there. So just a few minutes of having this nice hip opener, and then we'll just move to straightening out the legs. So as you're here, take a big deep breath, deep into the low belly, filling all the way up. And then once you've filled as much breath as you can, just take a little pause there. Not creating tension, just a pause. And then an exhale, release your jaw. Exhale it all out. One more. Draw in that breath, pausing at the top, holding, but not enough to create tension, just this kind of almost anticipation of exhale. And you can either continue this or just some regular, like kind of full deep breathing while we're in this space with the knees open, just making them broad. Some clearing exhales are just really good in this open position here. Letting the belly go. There's no need to create any tension in the belly on that exhale, just release. So even a hum or a sigh is also part of vagal toning. When we hum, when we sing, it's signaling to the vagus nerve that we're okay here. We can bring the body down. When we are in fight or flight, our body has high levels of adrenaline and cortisol. And this vagal toning is part of not only telling the body to stop releasing them, but we don't need this anymore. Helping the body filter those out. 3 more big, deep inhales and some sort of sigh or a hum. You can open your jaw. Last one. And just extend the legs, but maybe having something under the knees for a little support. Let the feet fall open. You can have the palms resting on something or just onto your mat, and letting the breath be natural here. So final resting pose, releasing any control over the breath. Letting the body fully soften. And if you'd like to lower this or remove the bolster, feel free. Whatever is most relaxing here to you. And as you're here, just let the mind focus back in on the breath, watching the inhales and exhales. Maybe even just taking a moment of gratitude for this whole breathing process that we don't really even need to focus on. It just occurs. That inhalation brings in a fresh supply of oxygen. There's an exchange that we don't even notice, and then we exhale and our body releases. That breath animates and moves us. That breath is a gift. It's transformative. It's intuitive and calming, balancing. And as you're ready, just start to open and close the hands. Start to make some movements in the fingers, maybe even straightening out the legs, circling into the ankles. You can circle into wrists. Gently bringing the soles of the feet to the mat or to your bolster. You can move your head from side to side to start to get into that cervical spine a little bit. And then very, very gently kind of using your bolster and just getting that hip to one side, bringing yourself up very slowly, coming into any easy seated pose that you would like. Allowing yourself to feel into the sits bones, feel the crown of the head reaching upward. You can take an inhale, sweep those arms overhead. As you exhale, bring those palms together, draw them through center to your heart center. Just letting your head kind of bow gently to your heart. And I'll leave you with a quote from Thich Nhat Hanh: "Breath is the bridge which connects life to consciousness, which unites your body to your thoughts." I thank you for spending time for yourself, for connecting to breath, connecting to your own healing, and maybe just taking some time, even if just for today, to focus in on breath, focus in on the alchemy of breath and the medicine that breath can bring. I appreciate you and I thank you, and I hope to see you sometime soon. Thank you again.